No. Oh, okay, for recording. Okay, so today we'll discuss soft output algorithms. Okay, what does it mean? Okay, um, naturally map sequence estimation comes into picture. Okay, then you interleave this data using some interleaving rule. Okay, it's like shuffling of these bits bk. Then we have this bits to symbol conversion. Okay, that gives xk. Okay, this goes through a multi-path channel. I just eliminate all the steps corresponding to, right, up conversion, pulse shaping, all those things have been excluded. In fact, you can abstract out the pulse shaping function into the channel. Okay, channel. Okay, and the channel is with impulse response hk. Okay, now this data will be convolved with some channel impulse response. Add additive white Gaussian noise. This is AWGN. Okay, we'll talk about the density function later. And then yk. Okay. Now we'll talk about a receiver for this system. Okay. Talk about a receiver for this system. Can you see this? Okay. Okay. We receive yk as input to the receiver. Okay. And then we'll build what is called an equalizer, which will unravel the effects of the channel hk. Okay, that is, it is compensating for the distortion caused by the multipath channel. So we build an equalizer, and then follows a de-interleaver, pi inverse, and then a decoder, which gives you the estimates of AK. Okay. Now you want to employ optimal, well, maps symbol detection. We want to apply map detection for equalization. Then you also want to employ map detection for decoding. Okay. So what we will do is, today we'll just talk about this. The same algorithm can be used for this, because in fact you can see that if you use a convolutional encoder, the operation of the convolutional encoder is very similar to an ISI channel. Okay. The output is sort of going through, the output is produced by a set of shift registers, right? Okay, anyway, we'll discuss that later. Anyway, Srijit is going to discuss in the next lectures. Okay, so you will learn that if you understand this, this more or less becomes trivial. Okay. But what is really important is that what we feed here is the signal directly Yk. There is no such thing as demodulation here. It is an equalizer. Okay. And the equalizer acts on the full sequence Yk. So we use a block detector, and Yk is a finite length sequence. Usually you transmit a block of data. Okay. So and this map sequence estimator gives you what does map stand for? A priori. Okay. So you need this maximum a priori probabilities of what here? We need here probabilities of xk given yk. That's what you want to estimate. Probabilities of xk given yk, or rather you want to estimate, if you call them bk, alternatively you want to estimate probabilities of, we'll call it bk bar. You want to estimate probabilities of the bits bk bar given yk. Okay, that's really what you want. Well, if you know this, you can always figure this out from this. Okay.
Equalizer removes ISI and also demodulates.
Yes. Yeah. Equalizer removes the ASI and it also demodulates. Okay. And then what is fed here is, after deinterleaving, the APP probabilities of the bits bk bar, or rather bk here. Well, actually here bk and bk bar are, they are the same, right? They are just deinterleaved. So probabilities of bk given by k, you feed here, and then it produces probabilities of ak given these inputs. Okay. Okay. This is one particular receiver that we are going to talk about. So we'll develop the algorithm called map BCGR algorithm, which can be used here, and then the same algorithm can be used in different receiver architectures, where we consider what is called turbo equalization, where you feed this, okay, back to this equalizer. Then we develop an iterative receiver. We'll leave that for the next session. Okay. We'll develop an iterative receiver where there will be an exchange of soft information, but leave that aside for a moment. Okay, let's just focus on this and learn about this so-called map sequence estimation. Okay. Okay. Now let's take one particular channel. Okay. I'm going to take a channel with memory 2 because we need to work with something. Okay. So the channel is xk goes through h0, a delay element, right? h1, another delay element, h2, and then we add all of them up. Then we add additive weight Gaussian noise here, nk, and then we get yk. This is the channel, just as an example. Say 3-tap channel with memory 2. So 3 taps, the memory is 2. Okay. So if I have to write this in a mathematical form, yk is equal to L equal to 0 to capital L, HL x k minus L plus noise k, the index k ranges from 1 to up till n. So it's considered a block of received symbols. Okay. Okay. So now, for the time being, we will just assume that xk has BPSK modulation that takes values from +1 and -1 with equal probability. The usual assumption. Okay. You can extend this to any modulation later. Okay. First, we will illustrate it for binary case. Yeah, tell me.
So demodulation happens in such a way that basically you directly estimate the complex number. So
We don't estimate the complex numbers, we estimate the probabilities of the bits bk taking a value 0 given the received sequence, or alternatively the probability of bk bar here, bk bit other bar taking a value 1 given yk. That's what matters to the decoder. Doesn't care about x. For each bit contained in the modulation symbol xk. In this binary case, it's fairly simple, right? Xk takes only two values, +1 and -1. So the probabilities of xk given yk are nothing but probabilities of bk bar given yk. They're equal. Okay. In the more general case, if you use QPSK or 16 QAM, there are more bits contained in one complex symbol. You have to move. You are interested in the probabilities of each given bit given the entire received sequence.
and then later on you club those together to form. I mean, once you
If you want, you can, but the decoder is not interested in those symbols. The decoder is interested in the bits. Okay, so rather you will estimate this first. From this, you can easily figure out this. The rule is there. The mapping rule is there. You can figure it out. Okay? If you know the probabilities of xk given yk, if xk takes, let's say, 8 psk 8 values, right? Then there are three bits contained in each complex symbol. You can calculate those probabilities of each bit position using the modulation mapping rule. Okay. What is that? Demodulation needs to know what is the bits to symbol mapping rule. It exploits that. I mean, how? I mean, yeah, right. Okay. So something like QPSK or 16 quant demodulation, soft demodulation is a special case of this very complex algorithm. It's like a small special case. Okay, we'll discuss that. So this is an FIR channel, okay, finite impulse response, or this is a channel with memory. It's a system with memory, okay, because the output depends on the past two data symbols, okay. The output at a given time depends on the current input and the past two data symbols, okay. Now if you want to do full map sequence estimation, one brute force way of implementing this, you can exhaustively consider all possible sequences, transmit sequences. How many are there? If it is binary, 2 raised to n sequences, right? In fact, in maximal likelihood demodulation, for each sequence, you calculate the probability of transmitting the entire sequence given the received signal, and you can exhaustively search which is the one with the highest probability. Okay, and then from that sequence you can calculate probability of each xk right, from the sequence probability. You don't want to do that. That's complexity is so large, you don't want to implement in that particular manner. Okay, so we have to exploit the structure in the system. That is basically, we know that there is a memory in the system, and we have to exploit this particular structure in the system and implement with least possible complexity. And that is, and the algorithm that we are going to employ has the least possible complexity among this class of map detectors. Okay. Okay. So, assuming binary modulation, we can draw what is called a trellis diagram for this system to show the evolution of states, and from this trellis diagram you can let me just show what happens in trellis. Okay, so any path through the trellis that are going to draw shows the evolution of input and output symbols, right? You can read the input and you can read the output through the trellis, right? If you take any given path. Okay, so the memory is 2. We are going to consider L equal to 2, which is a 3-tap channel. At any given time, I can think of 4 possible states, okay, and those states correspond to, if xk is the current symbol, xk is the current symbol which can take values +1 or -1 in this case, okay, if xk takes +1 or -1, and this state corresponds to xk, the values xk -1 and xk -2. The state stores the previous, the values corresponding to the past 2 data symbols. So this is, this state definition comprises of xk -1, xk -2. Let's say this is the state at sk. Okay. So if xk, if this xk is from a binary set plus with +1 and -1, a state can have, how many possible values can this state takes? What is the set of values that the state can take? 4. Okay, sk belongs to any one of those 4 states. Okay. Okay, and we will denote it as capital S. Okay, sk can take values 0, 1, 2, 3 in this case, because the size of sk is, size of s rather, instead of calling it s, is 2 raised to L. Okay, and more generally we can write them as R1, S can be, contains R1, R2, R3 up till R2 raised to L. Okay, those are the states, possible state, the set of possible states. Okay. In this particular system, given a current state Sk, given a current state Sk, which can take any one of these values, right? Here it corresponds to 4 values. Okay. So I'll write them as R0, R1, R2, R3. These are the states. Given you are at a given state Sk, the state Sk plus 1, the state Sk plus 1 can only assume one of these two values. Why is that? Let's see why it is the case. If I have to write Sk plus 1, the definition for Sk plus 1 is Xk minus 1. Okay, what is stored here is the value of Xk, current value of Xk and Xk minus 1. So from here plus 1 takes me to either here or there. Okay. And we can also assign the actual values contained in these states by looking at this definition, right? How many are there? 1, 1, minus 1, plus 1, minus 1, minus 1. Let me see how this is done. We'll just wait for a moment, okay? We'll see the exact arrangement used in this particular setup, okay? See, actually the way it is defined here is, this is 1, 1, R0 is 1, 1, I'll write the definition, R1 is minus 1 plus 1, R2 is 1 minus 1 and R3 is minus 1 minus 1. Okay, and this is, I'll just flip them. If Xk is minus 1, it goes there, plus 1, it goes here. So the current value of Xk is minus 1, therefore it takes minus 1 and the past value remains the same. Okay. Yeah, just definition is Xk minus 1, Xk minus 2. Here the definition is Xk minus 1, the pair. Okay. So if you want to reach from here to here, you will keep minus 1 here and Xk minus 1 is minus 1 here. So you will flush out this value. When you go from here to here, current value Xk is minus 1 and then you will retain this value in this position. So this will be plus 1, minus 1, 1. Well, it's the same mapping, right? 1, 1. Okay. Now we are ready to complete the trellis diagram with these definitions. Okay. Let me go back once again. This is Sk, which is defined as Xk minus 1, Xk minus 2, and this is Sk plus 1, which stores the current value Sk and Xk minus 1, which is the past value, because we are looking at Sk plus 1. Okay, and there is a transition from Sk to Sk plus 1, which is caused by the current symbol Sk, which comes and occupies this particular position, and then you remember the previous value xk minus 1 that is stored in this particular node. Okay, this is very crucial for you to understand. If you don't understand this, then it will become little difficult later on. This is the trellis diagram. So now you can continuously evolve based on this trellis. Okay, now let's complete this trellis. If I am here, okay, a minus 1 takes me here, xk equal to minus 1 takes me here, and it will remember this value, it becomes minus 1, minus 1. And a plus 1 takes me to
Second state
it's not here. The plus 1 takes me to
should be minus 1. 1 minus 1 minus. Xk plus 1.
1 1 minus 1 1
Same order.
1 minus 1. This one should be minus 1. Okay, we missed it. Okay, now it will go here. Okay, this is xk equal to plus 1. Now let's complete this. If I am here, a minus 1 takes me here, and then you will remember xk minus 1, which is 1, and a plus 1 takes me here, which is plus 1, and what is remembered, xk minus 1 is 1. Okay, and if you are here, you can go either here or here. This corresponds to xk equal to minus 1, this corresponds to xk equal to plus 1. And now you can put a set of states here and you can complete the trellis, which is pretty much the same. Okay, the same assignment, but what changes though is the received signal will change. The received signal corresponding here is yk, and the received signal corresponding in this between these two connection is yk plus 1. Okay,
And for every k we can draw this diagram.
yeah, we have to draw it for every k. Of course, once you draw between two segments, it's sort of use a lookup table and we know exactly the relationship between any given state and the current state. So what matters is, should know the relationship between the definition of the current state, the next state, and given a current state, how do you reach the next state? That's what you have to know.
How will you define
yk is the received signal. It's not defined, it's the input received. It's given to the trellis, we'll work on it now. Okay. So the state Sk can take some value Ri, which is 1 of R0, R1, R2, R3. We'll just call it Ri, where I takes values from 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. And at the next state, xk plus 1 can take one of the values Rj, j equal to 0, 1, 2, 3. We're just introducing some notation here. Okay. This is a time k. This is a time k plus 1. Okay. Now a branch of a trellis what is a branch here? This is a branch, this is a branch, this is a branch. Those connections are called branches. A branch of a trellis is a four tuple that is I, comma j, comma the value x, instead of calling xk, xij, because between any two connections xij you can have plus 1 or minus 1. Xij, comma we call Vij, where Vij is, or rather Vk is defined as HL xk minus L, L equal to 0 to L. Now Vij is the value of this quantity which is dictated by this tuple. What does that really mean? If I am given these two, if I am given this branch, I know the value of xk which takes minus 1 or which is xij in this case. Okay, I know the value of xk minus 1 and xk minus 2 stored in sk, which is minus 1 and minus 1, and the channel quantity is fixed HLs, therefore I can calculate Vk, which I call it Vij. So for each branch this quantity will change. Is that right? Because these would change. xk minus 1, xk minus 2 are dictated by a given branch, which are dictated by the values stored in these nodes. If you consider this branch, minus 1 minus 1 are the values of xk minus 1 and xk minus 2, and the current value is xk is plus 1. So this connection is dictated by this 4 tuple.
So I comma j are xk minus 1 and xk minus 2.
We are just introducing an extra notation. I comma j are nothing but this we call I, this we call this is called Ri, this is called Rj. Ri and Rj can take any one of those 4 values. Okay, it's just a notation. Okay.
So xij is the present xk.
Yeah, present xk for that branch, because it can take 2 values, right? Xij is the present xk on that branch.
You don't really need four tuple, right? If you specify I and j, you can calculate xij also.
That's true. We're just calling them. Okay. That's true. We're just introducing notation here. Okay. It may be, it's just a mathematical development, because you need a structured algorithm. And actually implement it, you can implement in a different way. Okay. Okay. But you have to understand that a connection exists between only for certain values of I and j, and for example, between this and this, there is no connection. So we call the set B, okay, the set of all index pairs Ij corresponding to valid branches. Is denoted by the set B. Is denoted by set B. Okay, and that B in this case will take some values 0, 0, 0, 1, something like that. Okay, These are valid connect branches. Okay. Okay, now we are ready to develop the algorithm. Okay.
So what does the algorithm do?
We said we are interested in estimating the probabilities of xk or the bits contained in xk.
So output will be this set of probabilities.
Yes, the output will be this, the probability of xk given yk, or the probabilities of those many bits contained in xk given received sequence yk. You will output those probabilities symbol by symbol.
Estimate sequentially. I mean, you estimate xk minus 1, then xk, xk plus 1.
Well, we'll see how to do it, because we have to actually observe the entire sequence. Why is that? Because there is memory, right? So indeed you have to observe the entire sequence. So although we call it a symbol by symbol estimator, actually you have to observe a block. But algorithm actually delivers symbol by symbol estimators. Okay, but it's not really a symbol by symbol demodulation, it's a block demodulation. So you actually have to wait the whole time n, you have to receive a packet. Okay, the packet is yk, k equal to 1 to n, you have to receive it, store it, and then calculate, act on those values and calculate the probabilities of xk, probability of xk given yk. But in an actual implementation, you don't have to wait completely. You can, as soon as you receive something, you can start doing the processing. That is an implementation trick. You don't have to really wait for the entire block before you act on it. Okay, you'll see that when you learn the algorithm. That is an online implementation. Okay. As usual, xk's are IID. As usual, xk's are IID, and nk is also an IID process. Right? That is, these are standard assumptions. Okay. Now we'll first calculate the probability that calculate the probability that a branch from state sk which takes some value ri at stage k or at time k to state sk plus 1 equal to rj at time k plus 1 is in the optimal detected path. Of course, given the entire received signal. Given entire sequence yk. So what we are saying is that find the probability that sk equal to ri equal to and sk plus 1 equal to sum rj, this segment lies in the optimal detected path. Given the given the entire, we're just looking at this segment right now. So among all these connections, let's say what is one of them lies in the optimal detected path, right?
What is the approach?
Well, we'll figure that out. Let's say there is an optimal detected path. What is an optimal detected path? It could be going like this. There exists an optimal detected path. It goes through the trellis. The rest, when you finish detecting, right, there is an optimal detected path, right? Because when you know the probabilities of xk given yk, and at each time you know exactly the one which maximizes it. Xk can take value, let's say 1 or 2, whatever it is, okay? And you just trace it through. There is an optimal detected path. So let's say what? Let's contain the let's calculate the probability that a branch from state sk equal to ri at time k to state sk plus 1 equal to rj at time k plus 1 is in the optimal detected path. Okay. And we also know that probability of sk equal to probability of from now we'll drop sk equal to ri, sk plus 1 equal to rj. We'll just, for convenience, we'll drop that notation. When I say sk, it takes a value ri. Okay, we'll drop that. Probability of sk comma sk plus 1 given y, we'll also drop k here because it's the entire received signal vector y. Y contains okay. What is that equal to? We'll apply, well, you will see that the entire derivation hinges on Bayes rule. We don't use anything but Bayes rule and the concept of statistical independence. There are only two fundamental theorems, well, we use the notion of statistical independence and the Bayes rule. See, we'll keep on applying this several times. Okay, and this is equal to probability of sk comma sk plus 1 comma y. Here y actually means it's the entire sequence, it's understood. Okay, y implies the entire sequence y1 y through yn. Okay, divided by probability of the sequence y, which contains y1 y through all the way to yn.
Channel is assumed to be time invariant.
Yeah, channel is always time invariant. In fact, that's standard assumption we make unless otherwise stated. For this whole block, channel doesn't change. Okay. Well, if it changes, you have to know what the changes are. Okay. Right now we assume it's invariant. If it changes, you have to know exactly how. Basically, you know the channel completely.
The channel is also estimated before you start.
Yeah. We don't talk about that here. Channel is known. Channel state information, HK is known. Is known perfectly to the receiver. How it is known, that's a separate matter.
If you're saying equalizer is there, it implies the channel.
Okay. Right now we are concerned with handling the ISI here. Okay. Channel is known to the receiver. How it is known, you probably estimate it. Okay, that's a separate issue. Okay, we'll keep the trellis right here and we erase here. Now we will consider this part because this is the same for that is independent of xk. So there is not much information in p of y because it's the same for all symbols xk. What matters is this because you can calculate this from this quantity. Okay. Now let's work with this numerator, which is sequence y will expand it in the numerator. Okay. Instead of writing it as y, we'll write it as y1, y2 up till yk minus 1, comma yk, comma yk plus 1, all the way to y. Yeah, I'm just rewriting probability of sk plus 1 comma y in a slightly. This whole thing is vector y. So what I am doing is that I am going to look at the current y, past y, future y. Okay, current received y, the past values of y, and the future values of the samples y. Okay. Now what I will do is I'll take this portion, I'll take it as one entity, and now I'll apply Bayes rule on this. Okay, just see how it, probability of some a comma b, something like that. Okay, we'll apply the Bayes rule. Well, actually, let me rewrite it. I'll take everything corresponding to S current, that is Sk, y1, y2, basically the past parts, everything corresponding to the past, y1, y2 up till yk minus 1, and Sk corresponds to past. Sk plus 1 is anyway into the, right, it comes after that. Okay, so now I will rewrite this as probability of Sk comma y1, y2 all the way to yk minus 1 multiplied by, let's call it something like a, and then probability of Sk plus 1 yk plus 1 all the way to yn given what? This part, whatever is a. So I'll just call it a for the time being because I don't have space to write it. Okay, and I call this entire probability alpha k of Sk, just it's a notation because it's a function of Sk. Yeah, we'll see that. First let's go through this rule. Okay. Okay. Now again we'll apply this Bayes rule on this. Okay. Now I will be interested in these two components. Okay. Given Sk. But you have to understand that this A is composed of Yk comma Y1 up till Yk minus 1. If I can just call it given Sk. Because if you are given Sk, it is understood that you are given all the way up till Yk minus 1. Okay. But in any case, what I am interested in is alpha k of Sk. I can write as probability of Sk plus 1 Yk given Sk. Okay, this A contains Sk. Okay. Okay. Multiplied by probability of Yk plus 1 up till Yn given so I am going to apply the chain rule again there, Bayes rule. Okay. I am going to keep Sk plus 1 Yk here just like the way I have done it. I have kept this one and this one. Okay. This one and all the way to Y1 to Yk minus 1. And I am left with whatever is left given this part. Given this whole part, which is Sk plus 1, and I drop all the Yks here because it's understood that given Sk plus 1, I am given all the way to Y1 to Yk. Okay. So given Sk plus 1, you might say, why don't you write Y1, Y2 all the way to Yk. But I am going to drop it because if I am at Sk plus 1, I already have all the way to Yk. With the understanding, I will drop them. Okay. So what have we done? We've taken this, we took the quantities corresponding to the past and then we left with this term, and then we took the quantities corresponding to the present. What is present? The connection between Sk and Sk plus 1 and given and also Yk. So we have probability of Sk plus 1 comma Yk given Sk, and this corresponds to all the future terms. Okay. So this we call beta k of, or rather beta k plus 1 of Sk plus 1. Okay. And this part is called gamma k of Sk comma Sk plus 1. Basically, it's something that connects Sk and Sk plus 1. From here to here, Bayes rule. From here to here, again, repeated application of Bayes rule. The only thing is that I have dropped some terms here corresponding to y case, okay, which is not necessary right now. Okay? Yeah.
When we say SK is ordered pair XK minus 1 and XK minus 2, right? So those are correctly estimated symbols, or those are received values.
This one you're talking about, this. They are not received. What is received is yk.
So
Okay. Sk takes 4 values from R0, R1, R2, R3. And the definition of Sk is xk minus 1, xk minus 2. When you evolve through the trellis, the values of xk minus 1, xk minus 2 change because of the current symbol xk, and you go from here to here, and these are the values contained in, these are values of xk minus 1, xk minus 2 if you are at xk, and now we have to find the optimal path. When you find the optimal path, you know the entire sequence xk, you can read it out.
I'm asking whether XK minus 1 is a correctly estimated. You know, this was the transmitted or this was what you received, because there might be
when you find out the optimal path in the end, then you can read out the values of xk from the values stored in these bubbles. When you find the optimal path is dictated by the sequence sk plus, I mean basically those are rij pairs, and you have to go in there, and if you want hard decisions, if you want to just find out what is the optimal detected values of xk, you can go there and read the values stored here, -1 and -1. So they will be estimated in the end.
but not now.
Not now. Right now it is only a trellis that defines the relationship between the current state and the next state. We are not estimating anything right now. It is just a trellis. It shows the evolution of states.
So now they are not the symbols that were transmitted. Now they are the symbols that were received, that we received, right?
See, if you go through this entire trellis, it shows the exhaustive combination of all possible paths. Instead of 2 raised to n, we brought it down to, what is the advantage in this trellis? Xk is takes +1 -1. There are n transmitted symbol. There are 2 raised to n, capital N, feasible combinations, right? If xk takes +1 -1, if n is the total block length, there are 2 raised to n possible sequences. From 2 raised to n, we have cut it down to, well, let's see how many they are. They are substantially less. So cut down the likely set of paths, because we have eliminated some of them. This connection is eliminated. Therefore, from here to here, there is no connection. But if you take the exhaustive set of feasible sequences, you will end up taking all connections. But right now, where is the complexity reduced in the search mechanism? Whether it is a maximal likelihood or mapped search, this has been eliminated because the memory doesn't allow that connection. Okay, this is where we are achieving the complexity reduction in some ways. But we still have to go to the map sequence algorithm that operates on this trellis.
We are detecting the optimal path as a whole and not as branches. So my question is, when I move from,
No, we are going to estimate symbol by symbol probabilities in this algorithm. If you do maximal likelihood sequence search, then you will estimate the optimal path. You can estimate the optimal path even in map estimation after finishing the after completing the estimation of map probabilities for each data. Then you can connect them and see the optimal path. Okay, but actually map doesn't estimate the entire, map doesn't give you the sequence probability. It gives you symbol by symbol probability. So that's what we said. What is the probability that a branch from state sk at time k to sk plus 1 at time k plus 1 is in the optimal detected path? I think we are just looking at this segment right now and we want to make this decision.
And you're sure that what we have done before is optimal?
Yeah, everything is optimal. In this segment, we detect the optimum path. In this segment, we detect the optimum path. In this segment, we detect the optimum path. We are done. But in maximal likelihood estimation, you detect the optimum path, which is a sequence. In the Viterbi algorithm, okay, what happens is that you will find the optimum sequence path, which is the starting from 1 to n. From that, you get the decisions on xk, which you read out. That is the Viterbi algorithm, okay, which is the maximal likelihood algorithm, okay, which we are not discussing right now. We are doing the map, but anyway, they are connected. In some ways, they are connected. Map and ML are connected. We'll show these connections later on. When you make certain approximations, we'll show the connections later on, okay. If you don't want soft output, if you want hard decisions, you can as well make some approximations on the map and end up with, if you remove the backward recursion and if you do what is called max log approximation, and map becomes ML, okay. We'll show those connections. Map and ML are somehow connected, okay? But they are distinct. Okay, so our aim right now is find out the xk given this segment, okay. Sk and sk plus 1, find out the probability of xk. So now this probability of sk comma sk plus 1 comma y, this joint probability can be broken up into 3 parts, and the first part depends on everything that happens until now. The second part depends on what happens between these two segments, and the third part depends on everything that happens in the future, okay. Okay. Luckily, in this particular problem, because of the nature of the system under consideration, where we have memory, this alpha k of sk can be estimated recursively, which I will not show. You can read literature and figure that out. This alpha k of sk can be estimated recursively. Similarly, beta k plus 1 of sk plus 1 can be estimated recursively. Okay, what does that mean? Well, the term alpha k, instead of calling it sk, I will drop k there, of s is equal to summation alpha k minus 1 of s prime gamma k minus 1 of s prime comma s, where s prime belongs to a set S. Okay. So this is called the forward recursion. This is called forward recursion. Okay. In fact, if you just wait for a moment, once we define forward recursion, backward recursion, and the branch metric, then we are ready to make the decision. We'll show how to make the decision. Then we'll also show how to implement this. Okay. Let's hold on to this for a moment. Okay. Okay. What it means is that although I have written it for Sk, which should consider this segment, which I don't have here, I will apply this forward recursion to this segment, okay, just for the sake of illustration. In this case, S prime comma S denote, this is S prime, this is S. Okay, the metric at this point, the forward metric at this point is sum of, okay, the forward metric at this point is, take the metric here, multiply the metric gamma k which connects these two, take the metric here, multiply with the current branch metric gamma, whatever gamma for this, then add those two. Whatever is merging here, take the metric stored here, forward metric, multiply with the branch metric, take the metric here, multiply with the branch metric, add those two. That's what it means. Okay, and we will also show that in the Viterbi algorithm, you will take the distance here and the distance here. You take the distance here and you add it to this distance stored there. You take this distance, you add to the cumulative distance stored here, and you take the minimum of that. That's what happens in Viterbi algorithm, and we'll see these connections later. Okay. Okay. So this is the forward recursion. Next, the backward recursion. So you can go back to the original publication by BCGR. Actually, there are 4 people. That's why you call BCGR. They are the Ball, Koch, and some, right? R stands for Raviv or something. There are 4 guys, Israeli. It's an Israeli team. So there are 4 people. So we take the first letter of their name and we created BCGR. Go and read the original publication where they show the derivation. Otherwise, you take standard books and read how this recursive rule is obtained, because we don't want to spend a lot of time on this. Okay. And the backward recursion, beta k of S is equal to beta k plus 1 of S prime into gamma k of S comma S prime. And S prime belongs to some set S. And maybe this set is different from that set, we'll call it S bar. Okay. What does it really mean? To do the backward recursion according to this, I can take this segment and do it, or I can take this segment and I can calculate the backward metric for the same point. At each node, there is a forward metric and backward metric which you have to calculate. Forward matrix moves in the forward direction because I am here, I have these two, I calculate the metric, then I go there and I have these two, I calculate the forward metric, it goes continually in the forward direction. On the other hand, the backward metric similarly goes in the backward direction. That means you have to start in the end and you go in the backward direction. Okay, let's see how it works. If I need the backward metric here, that would be the backward metric here multiply with the branch metric, the backward metric here multiply with the branch metric, add them up, because that is the set S bar. If I want the backward metric here, you need the backward metric here, you need the branch metric, multiply and add that with backward metric, branch metric, and that is the set S bar. Okay, it's much easier to see it from the trell list rather than from the mathematical notation as such.
How does the algorithm initialize?
Initialization, you alpha 0 of S is equal to probability of S0 is equal to S, that is the distribution of the state at time k0, okay, and beta n, that is in the end, of S is equal to 1 for all value, we call it S prime, right? For all S prime belongs to S bar. Okay. Now, We haven't defined what this gamma k is, right? This again, we apply Bayes rule on this middle term. Okay.
We need to find probability of sk plus 1 given yk.
Yeah.
But this is
Well, we said that as long as you know that, then they're connected. Okay, just wait for one more moment, then we'll be ready to complete this. Gamma k of sk comma sk plus 1, which is the branch metric, right? Which you have to define. That is equal to this. And this I will write it using Bayes rule once again. I will write it as probability of sk plus 1 given sk. So that means I am keeping this, I am keeping this. That is the probability of A comma B type multiplied by probability of yk given sk comma sk plus 1. Okay, this Bayes rule you keep on applying until you reach the desired form. Okay. Okay. Now we'll go to the actual implementation. Okay.
how are we calculating gamma k?
We'll now talking about. We're not talking about it. Okay. Gamma k of, now we'll go to, instead of sk and sk plus 1, ri comma rj is equal to probability of sk plus 1 given sk is governed by what? No, just look at it. Probability of sk plus 1 given sk is governed by current xk, not yk. Probability of xk, yk plus 1 given probability of sk plus 1 given sk is governed by, that is nothing but probability of xk, that is basically governed by xk.
yk becomes xk when you estimate.
Not yk, yk is not in the picture yet. Probability of sk plus 1, this part, given sk is governed by, because you reach there because xk took value minus 1. You reach there because xk took value plus 1. The transition is caused by the current symbol. The transition is caused by the current symbol. So therefore, that is nothing but probability of xk is equal to xi comma j, just whatever that value is. Probability of sk plus 1 given sk is nothing but the probability of xk taking some current value, whatever it is, in that connection designated by the pair I comma j. Designated by the pair I comma j. And probability of yk given sk comma sk plus 1, well, that you should know now, because yk is defined as probability of yk given sk comma sk plus 1. If you are given sk comma sk plus 1, this whole quantity is given. That is nothing but the Gaussian density function. Okay. Probability of yk given sk comma sk plus 1, sk comma sk plus 1 jointly tell you the whole xk. That's what it means. That means probability of yk given sk plus sk plus 1 means this whole quantity is given, this is fixed. Therefore, and we know the density function, and that is, well, we'll write it as probability of yk given vk equal to vij, just for the sake of it, and this is vk, and we know that that is the Gaussian density function. Okay, we'll write the exact form in a moment. And this whole thing is equal to this as long as ij is a valid pair. As long as I comma j belongs to B, otherwise this probability is 0 if I comma j doesn't belong to B. Well, it's kind of self-explanatory, right? We're only considering this for the valid connections. Okay. Now, so we're pretty much close to finishing this up. Yk is equal to Vk plus Nk. Therefore, probability of Yk given, Vk is given by e raised to minus Yk comma Vk whole square. We're assuming real values, I guess, here. Divided by 2 sigma square and 1 over square root of 2 pi sigma square. We assumed real Nk. I think we assumed real everywhere. If it is complex, you know what to do. Okay, we assumed real valued signals here. It's binary system with all real channels and real noise. If it is complex AWGN, there is one for the real part, there is one for the, I mean, you have to figure it out. Yeah. Okay. Now we are finally ready to calculate the probability of xk given xk equal to x given yk. Now we'll assemble everything we have to get the APPs. Okay. Let's go back. This is what we started with, right? Given y is equal to probability of sk comma sk plus 1 comma y given probability of y. This is what we started with, remember? Now, well, we computed this, and this would be nothing but this with a scaling factor. So we are interested in this. Now take this quantity, probability of sk comma sk plus 1 given y, this joint probability is available to us. Now we are interested in probability of xk equal to some value x given y. The probability of xk equal to plus 1 given y, for instance, if you want that. Take these connections, figure out where xk takes value 1, okay? Figure out all the connections, branch connections where xk takes a value 1, and sum this probability over all those branches, all those connections. For all I comma j belonging to B such that xij is equal to some value x. So, what are the places where xk takes a value plus 1? This one, this one, this one. You take those connections and you know this metric, right? You know this probability. How did you get it? Forward, current, backward. So now I have the, let's look at it. I'll draw these I'll draw these connections. This one, I'm interested in this. I'm interested in this one. I'm interested in this one. 1, 2, 3, and then there must be
R2.
There is this one, right? This one. So these are the one I am interested. Okay, this is okay. Now take the forward metric, take the backward metric, take the branch metric, multiply them, and you get this and divided by py, which is dummy. We don't care about it. That goes out eventually. Okay, it's common for everything, right? Probabilities can be normalized at every stage so that you don't have to worry about it. Similarly, you take this forward metric, backward metric, current metric, multiply them, and do it for all the thick branches, and then add all those probabilities. So we get one product here, one product here, one here, and you add them up. That gives you the probability of xk equal to +1 given y, that is optimum APP. Okay. If you want to log likelihood ratios, well, you can take the probability of xk equal to, what is the log likelihood ratio? It is denoted as, it is the logarithm of ratio of probability of xk equal to +1 given y divided by probability of xk equal to -1 given y. It's called log likelihood ratio. Now you may ask, what if xk takes 8 psk? Well, again it's very simple. I can calculate the probability of xk taking values 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 using the same algorithm. Okay, because if it is 8 psk, there will be 8 branches going away from this. The current symbol takes 8 possible values. From any given node, there will be 8 transitions. Okay, that's how the trellis would behave. And at any given node, there will be 8 paths that will be merging. Okay, and you look at this slice and you take all the branches where xk takes value, let's say 0, 1 or 2, and sum up those probabilities. But on the other hand, if you are interested in the bit probabilities, you can also do that. If you want the probability of the most significant bit, okay, there are, let's say 8 psk, there are 3 bits, most significant bit, least significant bit, and middle bit. There are 3 bits in 8 psk. Well, let's say you know the bit position 0, 1, 2, and you want the probability of some bk taking value 0 for a given bit position. You observe the transitions corresponding to that bit position and sum over, that's it. Then you get it. Okay, you sum it over all the branches where that particular bit takes a 0 value among all branches. So in other words, this corresponds to, let us say 8 psk 0, 0, 0. This corresponds to 0, 0, 1, and there will be another one corresponding to 0, 1, 0, and so on and so forth. If you want this bit position, okay, you take all the branches where this bit position is 0 and you collect those branches and sum it. So if you implement it, you will see, you will understand this better.
Otherwise, we can treat this block as a bit string irrespective of modulation, and then find all bit probabilities, and then you combine those bits with respect as the symbols as per.
It's the other way. Well, both ways are feasible. You can calculate first the probabilities of xk equal to y. Xk takes 0, 1 up till some modulation size minus 1. From that, using the bit to symbol mapping rule, if you know the symbol probability, you can also get the bit probability. So you can, but only thing is that, well, it's really a preference, computational preference. On the other hand, if you know the bit probabilities, you can also calculate the symbol probabilities, because symbol probability is nothing but the product of individual bit probabilities given the received signal, and vice versa. Okay, so that part is fairly straightforward. Okay, and now you're ready to pass these APP bit probabilities to the decoder. Now what does the decoder do? Well, it runs the same algorithm, but the decoder doesn't have yk as the input. The exercise I have given you, the decoder directly takes yk as input, the one I have given you, that's a special case, but in general, the decoder need not have the received signal as the input because received signal was corrupted by the channel and we equalized it. Therefore, the decoder receives the APPs as the input, not the received signal yk. But that shouldn't be a big problem because the algorithm nevertheless flows in the same manner. Do you see what I'm saying? If I send this to the channel decoder, the decoder doesn't see yk as the input directly because the decoder cannot operate with yk because yk is a mishmash of channel and x case. And if you want really do joint equalization and decoding, it's humongous task. Okay, if you want to do a map sequence estimation, combining equalization and decoding, because now there are two codes working together, that's a very tough task. So we have separated the process of equalization and decoding into two steps, and we implement this in a serial manner, and the equalizer has been implemented, and we have this is a suboptimal implementation of the system in some ways. Equalizer has been implemented, which delivers the APPs of the bits, and now the decoder again has memory. You formulate your own trellis for the decoder, okay, and I'll give you the branch metrics for the decoder right now. Okay.
And so this flow is alternative to what MMSC area and MMSC DF is.
No, there are all different algorithms. If you implement a linear equalizer, it won't be this, it will be a linear equalizer. At the output of the linear equalizer, you bring everything into a form where y is equal to x plus n mode, and you run these APPs. You again run the APP estimator for a memoryless channel, which is fairly straightforward.
So these are
Okay.
alternative path, parallel path. Both achieve same
Well,
result.
that is basically a one state. What is the trellis for at the output of MMSC or MMSC DFE or a normal system without memory? Xk, Sk equal to Xk, Sk plus 1 equal to Xk plus 1. There is no memory, and the number of branches is, in this case, Xk equal to 0 plus 1, Xk equal to minus 1, 2. And it stores either plus 1 or minus 1. I mean, just I am drawing this, there is no need for this. You can directly calculate the APPs for a system of this kind.
You think that is a singular case of this big?
This is the subset of that. Okay, I collapse this into this. Okay, if it is 8 PSK, there will be 8 transitions. Okay. Okay. Well, you'll have to implement at least once to understand this better. But now let's look at channel decoding. Okay. Everything else is quite similar for channel decoding. It has its own memory, but the channel is not H1, H2, H3. There it's a shift register with ones and zeros as coefficients. Okay. Again, it's a similar system with memory. Same APP algorithm you work with, but the inputs are not YK. So the branch metric has to be defined little differently. And that is very much straightforward because okay. If you are working with a decoder, at some point you will encounter gamma k of Ri comma Rj. The same general structure holds, but this is for a decoder. It has its own state Ri, Rj, and there is a branch metric. And this branch metric gamma k, I am talking about a decoder here. What is input to the decoder? Channel decoder. It is the probabilities of not xk, but the bits contained in xk, which we will call them bk. Given y. These are the conditional probabilities. Now the branch metric Connecting R to any two particular. Anyway, let's look at the original branch matrix. Gamma k of sk comma sk plus 1 was given as probability of sk plus 1 given sk and probability of yk given sk comma sk plus 1. Here yk was the received signal. Okay. Now remember that if you don't have side information in equalization, this turned out to be the probability of xk equal to 0 or xk equal to plus 1 or minus 1, which is half, right? That is the that's the probabilities of the, because xk are assumed to be IID. So this doesn't play any role unless you give side information, unless they are unequal or okay, we don't have any extra information on that. Therefore, this doesn't play much role because this is equal for all the branches. So what really dictated the branch metric was the Gaussian likelihood function, where the quantity Vk really changes for each branch because the intersymbol interference or the received signal changes for each branch. Okay. So now here, if you have to apply it to the decoder, again this part doesn't play much role because this is caused by some transition of the source bit AK. Okay. What really matters is the second part. And how is the second part governed? Any idea? I will leave it up to you as an exercise. Okay. You have to modify the branch matrix. What do you think will change? Hmm?
So this we calculated, right?
Hmm? No, for the ISA problem we calculate it. If I have to operate with a decoder where the inputs are probabilities of data bits BK and the decoder has to estimate what? The source bits. Okay. So I will leave it up to you to.
Once we have estimated what received, what was the transmitted. Mapping to symbol is like coding, right? Decoding the coding.
Anyway, I'll leave it up to you. You have to think about it. Okay. You have to construct the trellis for the encoder, decoder. Again, you have to redo this exercise. Okay. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Okay, now returning back to the equalizer map sequence estimator. There are the whole algorithm works with complex exponentials because the Gaussian likelihood function is e raised to something, right? And in a real implementation, you don't want to deal with complex exponentials, sum of complex, product of complex. I mean, that's a bit of heavy computation, right? So what you want to do is make some approximations. Okay? Remember, in the forward recursion, we are taking the product of forward metric, backward metric, and then we are summing over some branches. Okay. So there is an approximation called max log approximation. So you take the logarithm of this forward metric, and the logarithm of the forward metric is governed by the one with the minimum metric, the exponent. So let's look at it. We have sum of e to the power of minus x I. This is a forward metric. This is a branch metric ij by I. I take some values. So basically it's a sum of e raised to some alpha I, something like this. If you have sum of exponentials, this can be approximated with the one, okay, let's put minus here, just the one with the e raised to min of alpha I over I. Can we do that? Is that right? So the entire algorithm can work with branch matrix. The entire algorithm in the ASA channel can work with the branch matrix. Okay, what does that mean? I know the branch metric here. What is the branch metric? Oh, well, the entire algorithm can work with the the distance path. What is the joint density function? E raised to minus yk comma vk square divided by 2 sigma square 1 over square root of 2 pi sigma square. Instead of working with this exponentials, you can just work with this metric. Now I can take this metric, which is this, the distance, we call it distance, right? It's an Euclidean distance. Take the Euclidean distance, add it to the previous metric, store it, take the Euclidean distance, add it to the previous metric stored there, take the minimum of those two, and that would be the metric stored here. And you can do similarly in the backward recursion. So where you are operating this in the distance domain, and this is an approximation to the map algorithm because you invoked what is called max log approximation. This is called, well, I guess if I remove, if I try to make it plus, then that becomes max. Okay, or now min log approximation or max log approximation. Okay, so you look at the savings in computation here now. Everything works in distance domain for the equalizer. You don't have to deal with complex exponentials. Okay, and if you work it out, you can directly end up with the log likelihood ratios also. okay, which is again ratio of probabilities, and there is a log involved there. Yeah. So everything is, you really work in the distance domain. Okay. Now let us say I eliminate the backward recursion completely from the picture. I just ignore it. Okay. I'll remove backward recursion from this algorithm and apply max log algorithm. Essentially, at every node where some paths merge, you choose the minimum metric, minimum distance corresponding to these two paths. And if one of them has the minimum metric, you can discard the other completely. Okay, and it's not relevant to you anymore, and you proceed. And in the end, you end up with some known state, let us say. Then you can trace back and detect the optimum transmitted data symbol, which is called the Viterbi algorithm, which is a maximal likelihood algorithm. I remove backward recursion, move only in the forward direction. Everywhere, I accumulate the current metric, find the distance, add them up, the metric, add the distance, choose the minimum, discard the path, whoever is keep the path that has the minimum metric and discard the other one, and you move forward. And in the end, you will end up somewhere. Let's say you end up with some known state, right? Let's say you end up with some known state, and then you can trace back from there. Now you know the optimum transmitted sequence. Okay, that's called Viterbi algorithm. So the Viterbi algorithm can be viewed as a special case of map sequence estimation. Okay, where you remove the backward recursion and employ what is called max log approximation. Okay, there are other algorithms called soft output Viterbi algorithms, where the Viterbi algorithm itself is modified to give soft outputs, or rather log likelihood ratios. They can also be related to map estimation in some way. So they are intimately connected, these two methods. Okay, I'll stop here. So what do we do next now? Can somebody implement this for an equalizer as well as a decoder, this BCJR algorithm? Anybody, anyone interested in this? Okay, for the decoder, well, it's the same method. Mathematically, they are identical problems. Okay, and use this paper. Using this, you should be able to implement both equalizer and decoder. By the way, these guys are from where? This guy was a German student spending time at Urbana-Champaign. This fellow is a prof at Urbana-Champaign. Okay, nice article, read it. Okay. There are a lot of papers on map algorithm. You can find them. Just Google them, you'll find them. But read the good ones. This is a good paper, for instance. Okay, so what do we learn today? Well, if you have to do an optimal equalization, it's fairly complex. Okay, if the memory increases, the number of states would increase. On the other hand, if you have to build a linear equalizer, all you have to do is compute the feed forward filter. Let's say you go to frequency domain, compute the feed forward filter, equalize, come back to time domain, okay, using a set of DFTs and IDFTs. That's completely different way of implementing equalization altogether. This is a sequence estimation, it's really probabilistic, right? Whereas a linear equalizer that we discussed last semester is, it's quite different. Even MMSE DFE is quite different. But again, the MMSE DFE approaches capacity if the decision feedback errors are non-existent. Then we may say, what would this approach? Well, this should be better than MMSE DFE. Okay, ideally this should approach a matched filter bound, but there will always a gap. Okay, any questions? See, there is always a gap when somebody teaches digital communication. People don't like to teach map estimation in detail. We always focus on probability of error for an uncoded system because that's what the course permits. But in an actual system, the uncoded probability of error has no relevance. That is only for our own understanding. In an actual system, what you need is the APPs, because most systems are coded these days and you need the APPs. So we should in principle have a course on advanced digital communication or a course on error control coding where we can deal with this. You can deal with equalization as part of error control coding also because they're very similar in principle. Okay, so what really matters is an APP estimator at the output of the either equalizer or some demodulator in the simplest sense. And if you use MIMO, even for MIMO also you have to derive these things. You have to derive an APP estimator, whatever it is, MIMO, SISO, SIMO, and then followed by channel decoding where you need an APP estimator. That's what you need. And you have to find simpler methods of implementing this APP estimator. So we stop here. So what would be the next lecture? I think I'm out of town on next Saturday. I think somebody should volunteer. Srijit, what was the plan? Yeah. So, and you should, I'll give you about 2 weeks time to work this out. Read the paper, implement this for a simple 2-tap channel, 2-state equalizer, BPSK, and then do it for 2-tap channel 8PSK, just for the sake of it. And then do the re-implement the channel decoding, Viterbi decoder that we gave in the course, MIMO course, implement this algorithm for the channel decoding, then you will really understand what's going on. So this is only for the purpose of learning, okay? Okay. No, we'll leave. We have done enough of OFDM, okay? So let's let's wait on that, because the entire semester we did it. In the class we talk about it. We'll wait. Of course, this is different. This is a receiver for OFDM, but let's wait on it. Many of you are exposed to OFDM, so let's do something else. How about stochastic geometry? Huh? But it has to be very elementary. That is, you have to assume that the people sitting here has no background. They have no background. Yeah. Don't make it. Don't put very clumsy mathematical notations. Make it as simple as possible. How many of you understood this? Can you raise your hands? Not the decoder. Okay, can you raise your hands? How many of you did not understand this? Which year are you in? Your MTech? Okay. Go through it. This is not something you will understand in one shot. Go through it a few times, and when you actually implement it, then I would say that you understood it and when it works. Okay. Do it, because we'll apply this to more interesting problems also. Okay, let's stop here.